I really wanted to record in the living room because it's a much airier room. As much as I love the library, it's just boiling right now. However, my neighbors decided this was a great time to start drilling, and so I started setting everything up. And then they stopped. Now I'm roasting, both out of spite that I already had to do the whole setup, and also because I am so afraid they will start again. Hello everybody, I'm Oliver and this is Chaotic Bibliophile. Today I have 5 books to tell you about and all of them are amazing. What can I say? I am having that sort of reading year. The first one is I Could Read the Sky by Timothy O'Grady with photographs by Steve Pike. So as it turns out, I talked a little bit about this in my previous Tuesday reads, and I thought it was just a bit of a random book, which made all the accolades that it had on the blurb and the preface by John Berger quite strange, but I just went with it. As it turns out, apparently it was a much bigger book when it came out, and it's a bit of a rediscovered classic, so who knew? In any case, I really, really loved this. I'm still a bit unclear as to the relationship precisely between the photographs and the text. So you'll see, this is a novel about this Irish immigrant who's living in London. He's an old man now. His wife has passed away, and he's reminiscing about his life growing up in Ireland, moving, but it's not just about himself. The narrative sort of opens up through his reminiscence to really portray this entire community and give a sense of what it was like to have to leave your country, to have your country colonized, this very big culture struggle. So it's just really, really interesting. It has this very beautiful, quiet writing. It's very painterly, very soft, but with a little bit of an edge of melancholy, I guess. Yeah, it was really, really good. But the pictures, which are all in black and white, and they are all beautiful, and they do complement the text well because they emerged either before or after, but sort of independently from the text. The way they are placed in the book sometimes cuts the flow, and it doesn't feel that they are always the most relevant to the text. So, although I would say this is a book that really impacted me and that I really loved, I did find it not perfect. Well, that's a very unfair thing to say. What I mean by this is that I think if there had been a little bit more consideration as to how the visual and the textual interact, it would have been even better. But I still super recommend it if you're interested in Irish literature, if you're interested in Irish diaspora or in immigration generally and migration and tales of the diaspora. I just really, really recommend it because it's beautiful and it's so simple, and it has these moments where one sentence or one image can just be devastating. So yeah, a really beautiful, quiet book to savor. The second book is The World of Yesterday by Stefan Zweig. First of all, shout out to Amelia from Amelia Reads because she said after I hauled this in a video, which will be linked down below and in the eye as always, she said, you must pick this up right away. And I'm so glad I did because it is so good. So, Stefan Zweig was a very prolific and important Austrian intellectual and writer. He wrote biographies, he wrote essays, he wrote plays, novels, stories, what have you. And this is definitely one of his most famous works. It is a portrait of a certain almost golden age of a certain Europe and Austria right before or in the lead up to the First World War and also in between the two world wars. So you can really trace a change in tone from the youth of Zweig, where everything seemed to be progressing and beautiful, and there was new writing and art, and he goes to all of these premieres and meets all these musicians and writers, and they really cared about this thing that is intellectualism. But then all of that slowly fades away with the First World War, and then sort of resurface again, only to get significantly worse for the Second World War. And actually, Stefan Zweig would commit suicide in 1942 with his second wife right after finishing this book. So there is this ghost that hangs over the entire book almost, this specter that Zweig acknowledges from the start, but that seems to not be as present in the first section because he is very masterful with this. And there's still so much exuberance to the writing. It's just so exciting to read, especially if you're a huge nerd like me. You just get this sense of movement and intellectual stimulation. What I will say though, it is a very specific view. Zweig obviously had money, he had connections, he was an educated man from an educated family. And even though I know the freedom that he portrays in his book is not necessarily applicable for everyone, it is still impossible to not be swept away by his writing. It's just so interesting and nice. And also, he's a very old school humanist, for better or for worse. He sometimes extends the benefit of the doubt to people that perhaps nowadays we wouldn't, which is okay because he was living it. But yeah, it's just really interesting to see because he has hindsight and we have hindsight as well, but these two are different viewpoints. So it's just a fascinating book. I think as a memoir, it's superb, but also as a work of sociology, it's just very fascinating and exquisitely written. I also want to highlight how depressingly relevant this book is right now. As I was reading some of his takeaways from the onset of both wars, I was just taken aback by how much this is still applicable now. And it was just really sad and depressing. And again, Spike did commit suicide, so. But when you're reading it and while you're reading it, there's still such faith in humanity and in art and comradeship that you can't help but be swept away. It's a very male comradeship, I will say, as well. And it's very interesting because he refuses to talk about his personal life, but he does talk about his friendships. He doesn't really mention either of his wives. There are some translators' notes where Anthea Bell explains why he would use the we pronoun and then why when he was preparing his second wedding, etc. But then he does talk extensively about his friendships, which are both professional and intellectual, you know, relationships, real friendships, real bonds. So it's just really interesting. It's a very old-fashioned way of distinguishing, oh, the love, the romance is the personal life, but then this very deep friendship is not. It's public life because it's between men and because it's intellectual. I don't know, there was something there that read very classical to me, which is not detriment to the book, really. It's just something that I noticed. If you like memoirs, if you're interested in either of the world wars, pick this up. It's so good if you're interested in European history. It's just great writing. Then perhaps my least favorite of these five books, which I love, is The Diving Bell and the Butterfly by Jean-Dominique Bauby. And this is translated by Jeremy Leggatt. It's a memoir as well. Basically, Jean-Dominique was editor of French Elle, so a very prestigious fashion and women's magazine, and he suffered an accident and he became locked in. So he had locked in syndrome, which is basically you are fully aware of everything that's going on. You have all your mental capacities, but you can move very little. And actually, the fact that he could even move his left eyelid was considered to be a big thing. And this is the way he dictated this letter by letter. How this works, he even explains in the book. They made him a special alphabet that had the letters ordered in order of frequency in the French language. Someone, his assistant, would be dragging like a spoon or a pen or something and tap each letter, and he would blink and people would transcribe. And this was not only for this book, this was the method of communication that people used. He basically just talks about what it's like to live in these conditions, and it's really interesting and illuminating. He is very funny and candid about his feelings. I think one of the most arresting images is when he talks about bathing time and he says, sometimes I laugh and I think this is great because, oh, I'm a 40-something-year-old man and I'm making these people take care of me like a baby. It's amazing. And then some other times he just feels disempowered and diminished and embarrassed. That is something really human. And the fact that he chose to put this in a book, I think is really valuable and helps for people to build empathy and understanding with these rare conditions. He talks about what it's like to be in a care facility, to have visitors, how the visitors interact with him, how he feels about his life previous to this accident, etc. Very enjoyable, very harrowing at times, but overall written in a light, if such a thing is possible. Very engaging, conversational tone, just overall really good. I recommend you pick it up. The next book is a chance library find that I'm so glad I picked up. I was literally walking to the checkout counter with my book, but as I did that, I was scanning the shelves. I always do that because I'm hopeless, and I logged in to a section that said Ingmar Bergman. And I was surprised because I didn't know he also wrote novels. I only knew about his films. So I eyed the books and this one immediately grabbed me. I mean, how could you not? It's called Private Confessions and it's translated to English by Joan Tate. This is the culmination of a very loose trilogy based on Bergman's own parents, but you can totally read it on its own. I did, and it was fabulous. You can read it not autobiographically, and it's also great. This is about a woman who got married way too soon. Everyone told her not to do it. She wasn't that sure herself. She wanted to oppose her mother, who opposed the marriage. And then 2 years on, she's falling in love with a younger man who's starting to be a priest. By the way, they are Protestants, so the priests do have wives. The point is that she's also married to a priest, so obviously an extramarital affair would not be good for a man of the clergy. This is very short as well, but it packs such a punch. It's writing that is truly cinematic. It reads like the treatment of a film, said complimentary, which makes sense because Bergman did turn this into a film. But I feel like often when people say cinematic, they mean either overtly descriptive to the point where they describe every little detail and object, or they mean it as it's very easy to read, it's almost like a film. That is not what this is. What I mean by this is, yes, there is attention to detail and scene, but also the paragraphs almost read like the instructions a director might give an actor to help them portray this character. That is so fascinating. I've never really read anything like it, and I really loved it. It's also non-chronological, and it's very light touch, all of it. It doesn't overstay its welcome. The action rises very slowly and quietly. There's virtually no plot. There's only conflict. I couldn't look away. I was so invested. Even if I didn't necessarily sympathize with any of the characters, you do empathize with them and you do understand this is what life is like sometimes. Obviously, at that time, divorce wasn't really an option. So it's just really fascinating and gutting and very quietly intense. So I highly recommend it. I really, really enjoyed this. Okay, and the last book I actually have here, and it is 1971 Never a Adult Moment, Rock's Golden Year by David Hepworth. If you've been watching me for a while, you know that I love David Hepworth. I love how he writes, I love his opinions, and I love how he expresses them. And this is no exception. This is the book that I mentioned in my previous video, linked in the eye and the description as always. After I finished it, I was so in this that I didn't know what to pick up. because I just didn't know where to go. I basically started this last year before I traveled to London, but I didn't take it with me. So when I came back and returned to it, it felt like going back to a friend of sorts. And oh my God. Mwah. So what is this about? David Hepworth basically proposes that 1971 is the golden year of rock and roll. It's the best year there ever was in terms of music. Now, he doesn't actually propose this with any sort of authoritative seriousness. If you say, oh, it's actually 1970 something, he's not going to fight you. That's not the point here. And he does allow for, oh, you know, the music of your youth is always important. But he also argues a very compelling case that due to both material, technological, cultural, and musical conditions, this was a very fecund year that was sort of a turning point in the rock and roll landscape between the beginning of rock and roll in the 50s and what would happen in the 80s and then the 90s and even today. Really well researched and really well argued. He is very readable, but he's also a very confident writer. He gives you his opinions and he makes clear which ones are his critical taste and his personal taste versus what is actual facts. He also brings in general reception at the time, critical reception, sort of the public's reception. He's exceptionally good at integrating all these bubbles. So his personal experience memoir, which is not a lot um, in this book specifically. The historical moment, what all the bands were doing, and the technological sort of advances and how all of these things evolved. And he's just really good at expressing the pulse, the moment. And I really admire it. I know he lived through it, but it seems like he's balancing so many things. And he's talking about the US and the UK and different bands and how people received these bands and so many players, so many musicians. So it's just really, really impressive. He's definitely one of my favorites, and I love how he writes. One of my favorites that is very easy reading, and it's a good primer, I would say, is Uncommon People, which is all about the figure of the rock star. He also has a book about LPs, Fabulous Creation. So yeah, whichever is your jam, please check it out. One of the things I love the most about him is that he accurately recognizes the importance of this period of music, but he's not an old fart. And even in Uncommon People, when he talks about we are no longer in the era of the rock star, he doesn't say, oh, this is a bad thing. He's just depicting history and he's just providing explanations as to why he thinks the way he does. And he makes pretty compelling cases. So if you're interested in rock history, just please check it out. It's really good. I'm currently reading several stuff. I'm reading stuff for the BookTube Prize. So these are my sitting down books at the moment. How to End a Story, Collected Diaries by Helen Garner, and then América by Grandin, and this is subtitle A New History of the New World. So I will tell you about all of these books in a separate video after the round results are announced. I will tell you what they are about. I will tell you what I thought about them and how I ranked them. Now, I was also listening to the fifth of those books in audiobook form, that is Memorial Days by Gwendolyn Brooks. However, I had to stop because Spotify ran out of hours. You get 15 a month, and I don't usually run out of hours because also I use Libre.fm and the library. But now because I was doing the BookTube Prize listening, I did. But fear not, I will be able to continue before the time runs out, so that's all good. However, I need a new audiobook, so I actually picked up The Sound of Utopia, Musicians in the Time of Stalin by Michel Krieelars. And this is really funny because, as you might remember, I bought this earlier this year. I didn't know I would get an ALC of this, but I did. I mean, I'm glad. I supported the author, and so far the book is extraordinary, so I'm really glad I have a physical copy to revisit. But it was just funny. It was just funny. But it's okay. I'm trying to find some audiobooks of books that I own in physical form. Not because I don't want to read them in physical form, but because I'm really trying to read the books that I own already. So I think this is a good compromise. And then my sitting down books, because I can't be in bed reading How to End a Story and América. I mean, I can if I'm sad, but not if I'm lying down. You get what I mean. I was missing short stories in my reading, so I picked up The Safety of Objects by A.M. Holmes. Oh my god. Suburban eerie horror, like Raymond Carver and Shirley Jackson on bitter steroids is how I'm describing it. I almost want to scream, like, who hurt you, A.M. Holmes? But I fear that there might actually be an answer to that, so I won't go there. And I mean all of this mega complimentary. I am supremely loving these stories. And then I am also adoring the novel that I'm reading, which is The Strangeness of Beauty by Lydia Minatoya. I hope to have this finished by the next Tuesday Reads, because it also has a really, this whole book has a really interesting story. Well, interesting for me, and I'm sure it'll be cute interesting if you love just book collecting. So yeah, I have this much left, but I honestly really just want to read this. I want to sit down and read it over the weekend. That is all that I have today. But speaking of which, I am working on a project which will be the next video, and after that I'll make another Tuesday Reads. I think just because I don't think I'm in a position to do any extra videos at the moment. However, because 4 of the books that I need to read this month are for the Book to Prize, and I need to talk to them on a separate video. I think if I am behind Tuesday Reads an extra weeks, that will be okay. So I can just squeeze in this video about a project that I'm really excited to tell you about. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please tell me, have you read any of these books? Do you want to read any of these books after hearing me talk about them? I've seen a couple of other YouTubers do this, especially booktubers, I guess, because we talk about books and a lot of people listen to us as podcasts, which is very fair. But the latest person I saw do it was Katie from Books and Things, which is basically to say, if you've been watching this, but you don't have anything to say for whatever reason, or you're in a rush, but you want to let me know that you watched this video, you can drop a little emoji in the comments. And I think I will choose the book and or the sun. You can do those, which means we're reading even though we're melting. If you want to put your spin on it and tailor it to your weather, you can also do that. That was a very long way of explaining it, but I just think it's a cute idea and I would like to know who's watching. That's all I have for today. See you next time. And my neighbors have started drilling again. First of all, I hope you can't hear this. Second of all, I feel vindicated. To be fair, this is a really nice background, but at the same time, it did take me a while to figure out the setup. But maybe that now that I've done it, I could do it. It's only going to get cooler. I feel like the last video that was as hot as it was going to get. Also, I feel really self-conscious because I know I usually gesture loads, but right now I'm holding a little notebook, and for some reason, and because I'm sad, it's so much easier to just keep my hands on my lap. But I now feel very self-conscious of that anyways. Not that any of this is relevant or you care, but I feel like sometimes a little behind the scenes magic is interesting, right?